There was a time when basketball was a game of positions. Point guards who passed, wings who defended, big men who lived and died in the paint. That time has come and gone. The sport has rebuilt itself into something faster, dynamic, smarter, and completely unrecognizable. Today, 7-footers pace the court like guards. Guards switch and defend centers, forwards initiate offenses, and if you can't shoot, switch, create, or survive in space, you're not a role player, you're a liability. The old archetypes, Kobe's footwork, Ewing's post dominance, Pippen's perimeter defense, Shaq's physicality, Garnett's intensity, they defined eras. But the modern NBA doesn't care about eras. It's focused on its evolution. Fast forward to today's NBA, Wembanyama isn't a center. SGA isn't a point guard. Chet Holmgren and Jared Allen aren't traditional big guys. And Cooper Flagg isn't just the league's most recent superstar. They're all prototypes, positionless, interchangeable, matchup proof. And as the three-point revolution has stretched the floor wider and wider, the league's talent floor rose with it. You can't hide anyone anymore. You can't stash a specialist. Every player has to do everything. This isn't just a simple changing of the guard in the NBA. It's a mutation and evolution. And in 2026, the sport looks nothing like the one we grew up with. This is the story of how basketball became positionless and why it's never going back. The NBA didn't wake up one morning and decide to become positionless either. It's happened slowly, but suddenly. A decade of tiny adjustments that eventually snowballed into a complete redefinition of what a basketball player is supposed to be. For most of league history, positions were identity. You weren't just a player, you were defined by role. Point guards organized, wings defended, bigs patrolled the paint. And the greats 25 years ago dominated within those lanes. They were specialists at the highest possible level. Their greatness was shaped by the boundaries of their position. But this modern NBA, it doesn't have boundaries. It has requirements. Every player must handle, every player must shoot. Every player must defend in space, and every player must survive in a league where the floor is wider, the pace is faster, and the margin for error is microscopic. This is why the prototypes we have now look nothing like the old ones. Wembanyama is a 7-4 defensive system who also shoots step backs. SGA is a point guard who scores like a wing, defends like a forward. Jared Allen is a rim protector, but he's passing, short rolling, and guarding in space. Cooper Flagg, the next evolution, a 6'9" do-everything forward who could plug into any lineup, any scheme, any matchup. These players aren't just fulfilling positions. They're fulfilling answers in a league full of questions. How do you defend 5 shooters? How do you survive in transition? How do you guard a 7'4" wing? How do you build a roster when every player has to do everything? This is the new NBA, with a new talent floor and a new reality. The first domino to fall wasn't shooting, it was pace. The moment teams realized they could weaponize speed, not just in transition, but in half-court flow, in early offense, in constant movement, the old positional rules started to crack. In the 90s and early 2000s, pace was a luxury or a standout quality. Today, it's a requirement. The game is faster than ever, not because players run more, but because they think faster. Every possession is a race to create an advantage before the defense can organize, and that race exposed the limitations of traditional roles. Slow bigs got hunted, non-shooters got ignored, one-dimensional scorers got trapped, specialists got phased out. Pace didn't just speed up the game, it compressed decision-making. You can't just be a paint big anymore, or you can't be a defensive wing anymore. There's not even pass-first guards anymore. You have to be everything. You have to do everything, and you have to survive everything. This is why the modern player looks like a hybrid animal. Part guard, part wing, part big, part creator, part defender. The game forced evolution, and the players who couldn't evolve, they've disappeared. Pace didn't just break the old NBA, it built the new one. If pace was the first domino, the three-point revolution was the earthquake that followed. Once teams realized they could outrun the old NBA, the next step was to outspace it. And nothing in the history of the sport has stretched the floor or stretched defenses to their breaking point like the rise of the three. The three-pointer didn't just become more common. It's become a top organizing principle of modern basketball. Entire offenses are built around the threat of it. Entire defenses are built around trying and usually failing to contain it. What used to be a specialty shot is now the baseline expectation for survival. The effect on the court is dramatic. The floor is wider than it's ever been. Shooters pull defenders out of the paint. Slashers carve through the gaps those defenders leave behind. And bigs who once lived on the block now drift to the corners, forcing their matchups to make impossible choices. Stay home and give up a layup, or help inside and surrender a clean three. This new geometry reshaped every possession. A simple pick and roll now stretches the defense across 50 feet of space. A drive from a wing triggers a chain reaction of rotations that must be perfect, immediate, and synchronized, because one late step, one wrong angle, and the ball's already in the air, already on its way to a shooter who's been practicing that exact shot since childhood. And as spacing expanded, the talent floor rose again. You can't play a non-shooter anymore. You can't hide a defender in the corner. You can't stash a big down low and hope nobody notices. Every player on the floor has to be a threat, or at least be treated like one. The moment a defender decides you're not dangerous, the entire possession collapses. This is why the modern NBA looks so different from the one we grew up with. It's not just faster, it's wider. It's not just more skilled, it's stretched. The three-point revolution didn't just change shot selection. It rewired the geometry of the sport, forcing every player, every coach, and every front office to adapt or disappear. The league didn't just add a shot, it added a new dimension. The moment offenses stretched the floor to its limits, defenses had a choice: evolve or get humiliated. Because once spacing and pace collided, the old defensive principles, drop coverage, rigid matchups, hiding weak links, collapsed almost instantly. You couldn't guard the modern NBA with 1998 rules. You couldn't even guard it with the 2014 rules. The game had simply become too wide, too fast, too layered. Traditional defense was built on the idea of predictability. You knew where the big would be. You knew which wing would take the star. You knew the help was coming from the baseline. But in a league where every player can shoot, drive, pass, and screen, predictability is a death sentence. The moment a defense shows its hand, the offense punishes it, so defense is mutated. The first adaptation was switching, but not as a gimmick, as a survival mechanism. Teams realized that if every player on the floor could be a threat, then every defender had to be able to guard every type of threat. The modern NBA defender isn't a specialist. He's a shapeshifter. This is why players like Bam Adebayo, Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, Wemby, Chet Holmgren have become the anchor in such hybrid roles. They are nothing like traditional bigger guys. They're like a pressure valve, a release switch, a roaming firewall. Guard the ball, protect the rim, quarterback the line, and erase mismatches before they even form. Jared Allen, once a pure rim protector, now has to survive in space, navigate short rolls, and make reads on the move. Even wings, the old defensive specialists, can't just defend anymore. And when you see even Draymond Green pulling up to shoot threes, something has seriously changed in the NBA, for better or worse. Bigs have to communicate, anticipate, and cover ground like free safeties do in the NFL. This is the new defensive reality. You can't hide, you can't rest, you can't be one thing. Defenses now operate like living organisms, constantly shifting, adapting, recalibrating. They trap one possession, switch the next, zone the next. They're built on chaos, not structure, on versatility, on the idea that the only way to survive a positionless offense is to become a positionless defense. And that's the irony of the modern NBA. The more offense evolved, the more defense had to evolve with it. The game didn't just become faster or more skilled. It's gotten smarter. Every possession is a puzzle, and every player is expected to solve it in real time. But this defensive mutation didn't just change how teams guard, it's changing how teams build. Because once every player had to defend everywhere, roster construction became a different kind of challenge entirely. one that front offices are still trying to solve. Something not even the era of signing 3 superstars and attempting to manufacture chemistry could even come close to. And that's the part that nobody talks about enough. Once defense mutated, roster construction had to mutate with it. Because if every player has to guard everywhere, then every player has to play everywhere. No ego. The old blueprint of building a team, finding a star, surrounding him with specialists, plugging holes with role players, doesn't work anymore. Not in a league where the holes get hunted, the specialists get schemed off the floor, and the star has to be perfect every game and be healthy. Impossible in this league. Front offices used to draft for fit. Now they essentially draft for how much can you do? They want players who could stretch into whatever shape the game demands. They want length, mobility, processing speed, and skill versatility. They want 5 players who could ball handle, pass, shoot, defend, screen, and make decisions at full speed. They want lineups that can morph possession to possession, big 1 minute, small the next, switch heavy on one trip, zone heavy on the next. The modern NBA roster isn't just a puzzle, but a toolbox. And the teams that win are the ones with the most tools. And that's why the league feels so different in 2026. It's not just that the players are more skilled, it's that the expectations have changed. The floor of talent has risen so high that the things that once made a player valuable, shooting, defense, playmaking, size, that's just the entry fee now. You don't get celebrated for having one elite skill. You only get celebrated for having all of them. The NBA didn't become positionless because it wanted to. It became positionless because it had no choice. Pace broke the rules, spacing broke the old geometry, defense broke the old rules, and roster construction broke the old logic. What we're left with now is a sport that looks nothing like the one we grew up with. Something entirely different has emerged. A game where creativity outweighs size, where versatility outranks position, where adaptability matters more than any archetype we used to worship. A game where the best players aren't defined by what they are, but by what they can solve. This is the new NBA. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Catch you on the next one.